Hello, my name is Alexander Straka, and I did my my video on classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is a learning process that functions through associations of neutral stimulus and unconditioned stimulus. This concept was made popular by the neurologist Ivan Pavlov, and in the year 1890, he conducted an experiment involving dogs and bells. In this experiment, Pavlov would present the dogs with a neutral stimulus, like the ring of a bell, while the dog is receiving an unconditioned stimulus from food that was given to them. In the dog's brain, the bell isn't associated with anything just yet. But as the dog is continually conditioned over time, he starts to associate the bell rings with the unconditioned stimulus for food that is given to him every single time that he hears the bell. After being conditioned for a while, the dog starts to have an unconditional response to the bell by salivating as if he was being fed whenever he hears the bell. This response came to be through classical conditioning, and as in many ways, this can also apply to human beings as well. Holiday music is one way that we are conditioned to get into the holiday spirit. So whenever December comes around, all of the stations start playing holiday music, and everyone is supposed to condition you to start thinking about Christmas and thinking about what you're going to do for Christmas, and that is one way that we are conditioned. Another way that we are conditioned is we can, in knowing people, like we are conditioned to know how they are going to react. Like we know them for so long. We can tell what they're going to do when they are presented with something. So, for example, if I were to bring home a report card with all A's, then typically we would go out to dinner, or the whole family would do something nice. We would go out to dinner and we'd go to a movie or something. But on the other hand, if I were to come home with poor grades, I would also be conditioned from knowing these people so long that I would know their responses to that as well. Some of the other characteristics of classical conditioning include extinction, which is the period of time after acquisition where the conditioned stimulus actually decreases. For example, this would be the period of time where the dogs that were trained to salivate at the sound of a bell, the bell just keeps on getting rung, but there's no food, so they continue to salivate. But over time, they will relearn that the bell does not mean that you will get food, and cease to salivate at the sound of a bell. There's also generalization that is in classical conditioning. You respond to a stimulus that is similar to the stimulus that you were trained with. For example, the dogs, if they heard a different bell than the one that they were trained with, they might also start to salivate. They heard a bell, they might want to think that it's food time. But there's also discrimination, which ties in with this, which is the learning of distinction between those two. So the dog can also learn that one bell means food and one bell does not mean food. And that is what discrimination is. I personally think that classical conditioning is really interesting, and I think that Pavlov's experiment really demonstrates and shows what classical conditioning really can do. I really think that being able to tie two stimuluses together is really cool, even when one is unconditional and one is just a neutral stimulus that you can just tie in with it. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.